Starseeds are the guardians of Terra who hold the knowledge of our ancestors. They are the inner earth beings that come to guide us with their wisdom. They are the enlightened beings from all over the galaxies that come to Terra like comets of light. They are the pioneers, the way-showers, and the architects of a new world. One built upon integrity, unity, and love. These are their stories. Join us as they share their journey of hope, as they break down paradigms and limiting beliefs, as they share their challenges and struggles to fit into the very society they are here to shift. The good, the bad, the everything. This is a journey of a starseed. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to our next episode of Journey of a Starseed. I am joined today by one of these lovely women that I've met recently, and I'm so excited to have her on my channel today. Alisha, Brache, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Sherri. It's so nice to finally connect with you. I've had a few synchronicities along the way. I think I first saw you on Journey to Truth, and coincidentally, like bumping into people in my local town, and them saying to me, "Are you aware of Sherri and the work that she's doing?" And I'm like, so when we connected, I was like, "Well, I think this is the right time. I think this was orchestrated. It was meant to be." So, thanks for having me here.
You're welcome. I definitely think this was divinely guided for sure. And there's a lot of synchronicities in the work that Alisha and I do. And I am really excited about this conversation because a lot of what we're going to talk about today are things that I'm so passionate about. And it's nice to be able to communicate with somebody who has had similar experiences or helped other women and families through similar things. So this is going to be a fascinating conversation. But before we get into that, Alisha, can you give everybody a little bit of a background on what you do, and kind of where you live, and just some sort of a background for everybody before we get started?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. I would say that I am an early version of a New Earth child or whatever name. I came into this world quite connected, and that was apparent through the early years. I sort of had hands-on healing abilities from a very young age, psychic abilities, and I would have a lot of sort of, I guess you could say, otherworldly experiences as a young child. So I chose my parents well, obviously, knowing on a soul level that I had signed up for a pretty wild and out there and big pathway into this lifetime. I chose parents who were kind of somewhat awakened already. And I think me coming into this world kind of prompted them to kind of get prepared. And so through, I, I share this often. I started very young. I entered into my first psychic development circle when I was 17, 16, 17. And I trained under my first teacher for 5.5 years, developing all areas of my psychic abilities, which was really refreshing because um, going through traditional schooling, I felt like it completely shattered my confidence and I felt like I wasn't good at anything. And so when I left school and I joined that psychic development circle, it really I think that's why I'm so passionate about helping children and women and things that I do today, because I when I joined there, I was like, oh wow, I'm actually good at something, because the mainstream education system had crushed me. I wasn't it wasn't built for me, obviously, as so many others. So I think that was sort of the beginning for me. And so I started doing sort of intuitive work and healing work from a young age. And from there, I kind of went, well, what do I do now? Because it's well, back then it was a different time. It was different space than where we are now, but I felt like I needed some form of accreditation, something that could prove what I, did. So I went from there and I studied holistic counseling. And I realized that there was a component that was missing through doing all the psychic work. And that was the healing component. And that's what I massively feel drawn to. So, sort of fast forwarding, I've done that off and on throughout my life until 2016, 15, 16, where my whole life completely changed. And that's what I call my ejection from the matrix, or from
Yeah.
the 3D way of living. And, I don't know. I often say I think I kind of avoided my path a little bit. I sort of dipped in, one toe in for a long time. But at that point, there was like no turning back. So I work I do what I call like energy alignment, soul reading, that type of work. It's very focused on helping facilitate for people to bring their highest expression through, to give them guidance around their path, what they're here to do, to be able to clear out energies, ancestral patterning, childhood. It's sort of a combination of energy work. It's very galactic, and I guess the holistic methods that were very grounded through my development and my training over the years. So it's a combination, but it changes. I find that when I kind of threw away, because I trained in different energy modalities, and every time I got there I was like, oh, I know this. And so when I sort of dropped a lot of the training that I had done, and when I just want to follow what my intuition is showing me, that's when it opened up in a whole different way. And I've continued to do that for many, many years. So fast forward, here we are in 2013. 2023. And yeah, there's a bit of a slip. 10 years has been sort of following my guidance and building a framework around what I do. And so what was a massive change for me was this process of what I call interdimensional conception of 5D pregnancy. And that was the main catalyst of not just an awakening, because I think I was always quite awake as a child, but it catapulted me into a whole different level of what I call cosmic consciousness, and stretched my human mind beyond what I knew was possible. Yeah.
Well, it's so funny, Alisha, because I was one of those people that when I went through the public school system, I left feeling very I had no self-confidence, and I never felt so unintelligent in my life as a result of school. Because I'm so right-brained that I really struggled with testing and the memorization aspect, because everything in school is all about programming. So it's memorize this and take tests, and I'm not good at that. Even to this day, I get very nervous, and so I struggled, and I felt like I was not smart, and it really hurt. It caused a lot of pain and turmoil for me for a good portion of my life, until I realized that I wasn't, and that's not me. And when I found the spiritual kind of metaphysics, and I was learning, I was like finally good at something. So I had the exact same experience as you, and I think many people watching this will probably say the same thing. They found that thing that they are good at. And it's so funny that, well, it's not funny. It's pretty on purpose that all the right brain creative activities are the ones in our society that are deemed, not professional, or, oh, you don't do that for a living. And a lot of people were so desperate to fit in and find that corporate job that they really struggle their whole life. And those are the clients that I work with now, who are 50, 60 years old or retired, and said, I was miserable my whole life. And now they're trying to get into Reiki and other metaphysical type of practices, because they want to bring that side out. So I think a lot of people watching right now can resonate with that. But one of the things that comes out in my sessions a lot, which is why I'm so excited to talk to you about this today, is the 5D pregnancy, as well as the conscious pregnancy. That's been coming up a lot for me, and into first full circle for me. I remembered my how do I say that? My memories have come through of my lifetime when I was in Lemuria, and I was a midwife, and I helped women have pregnant, deliver their babies, but not even just that, help them facilitate the process of working with the soul that was coming in, because everybody in Lemuria came in with a purpose. they were going to, they had a plan and everybody knew about it. It wasn't a secret. You didn't forget, and you were paired with the right parents for a reason so that they could help with that. So I have been hearing about this for a long time through my own sessions with other people who are also Lemurian, who kind of validated that and that memory of mine, which was very helpful for me to not think I'm making this up. But I hadn't heard anybody else talking about a lot of this stuff. And I've been told, you know, many times that conscious this idea of conscious pregnancy and conception and planning is where we're headed again. Once again, like in Lemuria, and this concept also of 5D pregnancies, which I've talked about in previous interviews, but not really elaborate because I wasn't sure if people were open to it. So I never elaborated much. And then I found you and I was like, oh my God, there's somebody else talking about this. I have to have her on my channel. So I'm going to put what I know aside, and I want to pick your brain today and let everybody hear your version of what it really means. Well, first of all, let's go into 5D pregnancy and kind of explain to everybody what that means, because it's very multidimensional and we can go in a lot of different directions, but kind of give people your synopsis of that and what it means.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I interchange words because I think there's different ways to explain it. But so 5D pregnancy was the term that I kind of summarized it all and packaged it up. But ultimately, it's women who have chosen on a soul level to bring in a higher vibrational children as part of this planetary shift that we're going through. And it's a pathway through ascension, and the way that it's always been shown to me, especially through my own experiences, that through the process of embodying my highest frequency or in embodying my higher self, that helps to bring or bridge, create a bridge to be able to embody the frequency of these children so that they can, I guess, use the gateway of my portal to manifest, materialize, and be birthed physically into this world in a a very, you know, summarized version. I mean, there's so many intricacies to it all, but in essence, when this process began for me, I had zero understanding of any of this. It was very shocking. It was very challenging, especially to my human brain. So I had to do a lot of research just to validate the fact that I wasn't going crazy, because, you know, I had to, you know, and I started researching and looking back into history of all the times of things like Immaculate Conception, and when religious leaders or people who have been change makers throughout history have come through into this world. And every time I was looking back into what I could find, you know, on the internet, or in, you know, intuitively be led into seeking information just to validate the concepts that were coming through to me, they all came through in a way that it was a merging of souls on a higher level that then brought through this avatar. And so as I traced it back, I kind of hit back to Lemuria and realized that that was how it happened back then. So this isn't, even though it's strange and it might be out there for some people, and I'm sure for many people, back then during Lemuria, in those societies, that is the process of how souls came into this world. There was no physical conception process. It was a merging, a higher of two souls who've chosen. Well, actually, it's a process of the soul who's choosing to come down for a purpose, and then the parents or the custodians who are going to be the caregivers and the ones that bring it through. There's an energetic merging process that takes place that allows almost like this channel of light for them to come through. It was, I mean, obviously what I'm going through and other women who are going through this path, it's different to what it was back then, because Earth was in a higher frequency. So as we're moving into a similar frequency bandwidth that Lemuria was on, I think a lot of women who were doing it back then have chosen to come back at this time now, to do a very similar process, just in a shifting paradigm, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I talk about this in my second book, Divinely Guided, where a lot of the new Earth children are so high frequency that because our bodies aren't quite up to 5D yet, and we're so dense, there's an integration process of 9 months to a year at least, where the souls of the child coming through, the being coming through with the mother specifically, they have to merge energetically a little bit at a time for 9 months, like I said, 9 months to a year even, so that the mother can receive the frequency of the child slowly. And that happened to me with my daughter. And that's why my daughter told me a year before she was coming in, she was merging with me and she was basically connected to me energetically, and she was with me always, so that because otherwise I would probably have miscarried her because her frequency was so high. And so many people are having what I refer to, I don't know if anyone else calls it this, but they have what I refer to as an etherical pregnancy for that period of time. And then the conception will take place when it's the mother that needs to be ready, not the being. They're ready. They're waiting for us to be ready. Our bodies emotionally and mentally have to be in a position where we are ready, and then the child can come in. And then not only does the integration process not stop then, even after they're born, I've been told it takes them up to sometimes 6 years of life before they can integrate all the way. So it's a huge process, but I think we're shifting out of that as we go into a higher density. This won't be an issue, but for right now, to bring in these starseed children, this is how it has to be. And so do you have any more information you can talk to people about with clients that you've worked with that are experiencing this interdimensional pregnancy and kind of the process of it?
Yeah, well, when I was told, so so in the beginning, so this process has been going on for a very long time, probably similar to what you were describing as the etheric pregnancy, but for me it's been very much a combination of etheric and physical. So I go through phases where it feels very energetic, very etheric, and then there's times where there's like a full physical embodiment and I can feel my body change, but it ebbs and flows based on frequency, what I can hold. And also I think it's very much, well, I've always been shown it's very much intertwined into the planet's process as well. Yeah, in the beginning I was like, what do I do with all this information? And I was told very clearly that I had to start writing that information and put it out there, because there would be many women who I would help. Back then it felt like a really far stretch. It was like, it's very niche kind of but I did. And from the moment that I put out that information, that was in 2016, the end of 2016 into 17, I had so many women come to me and say, I've been on this journey. So just to make it clear that a lot of the women that I connect with and have worked with, and myself, this process is an ongoing process far beyond our linear understanding of pregnancy. So I almost feel like I want to rebrand it and call it something else, because it's really an embodiment process that can go on for years. Where was I? What was the question? Sorry, I think I've gone on.
Some of the process of the physical process that some of the women that you've worked with, like what have they experienced on a physical level, or maybe the time frames that it's taken? Because I know a lot of people listening to this are hearing it for the first time, so they're trying to wrap their heads around what we're talking about. And so I want to get real specific, because I'm sure their questions are like, do these women have a boyfriend or a husband? Do they actually have a physical intimacy? Do the babies actually come through in a physical sense, or are they just merging with the mom, and then are they there's an energetic manifestation of them and they don't come in physically? Now, I know there's more than one answer to this, but these are the kind of things I'm thinking people are asking. So maybe we can go through some of those points.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and there's so many variants, and I think everything that you covered exists from what I've seen.
Exactly. Well, we can just talk about all of them.
Yeah, let's talk about all of it. Look, there is women that I've come across who are anchors of light. I think I can call them that. They're anchors of light. I think there was a big influx around 2012 where this became more prevalent, and there's other communities out there that I found that was kind of somewhat helpful for me at a period of time, which was called cryptic pregnancy. And cryptic pregnancy was women who didn't know they were pregnant, spontaneously gave birth, and then women who know that there's noticeable changes in their body, that they're physically going through a pregnancy, but it can't be detected through medical 3D technology, let's call it that. So there's all these different components. But going back to the anchors of light, I have come across a handful of women over the years who know that they're not going to give physical birth, but it's more of an energetic birthing of anchoring frequency onto the planet. And I felt really privileged when I was able to connect with some of these women, because it really, there was just a lot of gratitude, because I realized that they were also intrinsically part of this birthing on this planet, that they were kind of going through this process of their body changing and morphing, yet energetically being able to birth energy that was kind of creating a baseline frequency to help support women like myself who will go on and give physical birth at some point. So there's kind of like layers and stages of it. Through my work, predominantly a lot of people are in what I can call like a divine counterpart connection or relationship. So sometimes they are in a conscious relationship, and other times they have met that person, but they're not sort of together or present in their life, but they have gone through some sort of energetic merging, and then noticed, like I did, changes that start to occur in their body. And it's very confusing in the beginning, because you're like, what? I don't have a partner, you know, I'm not kind of thinking about having children, and all of a sudden my body's changing, and I'm having all these dreams of these children connecting with me and saying, you know, I'm coming through. And it's like it can be very it can be very challenging to the mind, to say the least. Well, I'm just trying to go back in terms of some of the questions that you posed. Just because
Know
there's so
anyone, Alisha, that has had actually birthed their baby yet? Do you have any clients like that who have had like gone through the whole process and had their star seed?
not any clients. Most of the women that I work with, it's almost like we track along, and that's been really kind of joyful and reassuring, because as we connect, because I hold a monthly support circle group and things like that, we go through very, very similar experiences. And from the beginning, I intentionally didn't put a lot of specific details out into the public, because I wanted to keep some things personal, and secondly, I wanted to kind of create a buffer field of people coming to tell me information that they couldn't have possibly known based off material they had read that I'd written. And I think in the process, I did connect with a handful of women in the beginning who had gone through and birthed their children. And the one comes to mind. I think I was at a real, I felt like I was at a bit of a dead end. And I kind of said to the universe, my higher self, I was like, give me something, because I'm ready to give up on this. And I came across a man named Den Poitras, who wrote a book. The title has escaped my mind for the moment, but he talked about parthenogenesis, and that's the scientific word for self-conception. And back in the 70s, he knew of a woman who he was close with who had gone through a process of light conception. So she didn't have a partner. She merged with the divine, I think, in her words. And her process took about, I think, 3.5 years to come to full term into birthing. Unfortunately, I mean, that child was born, but unfortunately that child didn't survive for very long on this earth plane, and the reason was because the density was too intense. So not to bring this conversation down, but I have heard of that too, that some of these children have come in, been born, and then sort of left what we would consider prematurely because of the density on this planet. But I think all of them have served a purpose in bringing a lot more light into the planet to help not only this next wave of children I believe I'm a part of coming through, but also the transition for Earth itself.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point, Alisha. There's so many good points actually you just brought up that I think will be helpful for women to hear, especially because a lot of these beings don't make it in the human body. It's just they're just too high frequency and the bodies are too dense, and that's historically what's been an issue, at least for the last 15 years or 10 to 15 years, more than not. And I think that what women should understand is, first of all, for those that have lost a child, what I have been told repeatedly is that there's no shame in the mother. It's really an experiment. A lot of the times, this is what word experiment isn't quite covering what I want to say, but for lack of a better term right now, essentially it is an experiment from our higher consciousness. Our souls say, let's try this, let's see if it's going to work, and they'll bring them in, and sometimes they're severely disabled, or sometimes the pregnancy isn't viable and they don't quite make it full term. But the beauty of it is that no matter what they are able to do, as far as how long they're able to either be in the pregnancy, in the womb, or if they're birthed even for a short period and they don't make it, they still are impacting our 3D. And
Yeah.
it's a gift. And the mother should be celebrate the fact that they're part of something absolutely beautiful, that that soul was able to come into our reality, even for just a moment, a flicker in time, makes so much more of a difference than we realize, because their light is able to shine through. That's why I keep saying, that's why these star seeds need to incarnate in a physical body or be in our 3D. That's how they make an impact. Otherwise, people would just remain in the angelic realm or the astral realm and help us from there, because they don't want to come into a body. But they have to, in order to, or they choose to, rather, in order to make a larger impact on our reality. That's how you anchor in the light. Like you mentioned, we anchor in the light through coming in the body, even if it's for a short period of time. So it should, all this life should be celebrated. But I think we're getting to a point where it's getting easier, and the mothers are getting to a point where they're evolved enough and they're light enough, meaning their frequency and their density rises, that they can carry these pregnancies to full term, and the children themselves can be within the body without it breaking down. I call it circuiting. A lot of times it's short circuits. And that's a challenge too, and so this is a really important conversation I think we're having, because I want women to realize, if they're having trouble with miscarriages or even getting pregnant, the best thing that they can do is try to raise their vibration as much as possible, take care of themselves and detox, because your body needs to be at a certain frequency to bring these beings in, right? So
100%.
let's talk
I
about that a little bit.
I couldn't echo that enough. I think one thing that comes to mind, I'll just backtrack a little bit based on what you were sharing. Probably the most common thing that I see is that there are a lot of miscarriages that occur in preparation, and I call them testing phases. It's almost like the soul kind of comes in, and it's like it's a test. They come in, they're conceived, and it's like they're there for however long, and it's like, oh no, it's almost
like putting your toes in the water just to test it out, see how it feels. Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, the test runs, and it's like that serves in so many different purposes. They're they're coming into density, which a lot of them have never experienced before. So it's like they're sort of acclimating to what it's like to be in physicality, to be in a physical body, to be on this planet. And also, as they're sort of coming in, they're bringing their frequency into the mother's energy field and physical body, so that it serves as two purposes. And quite often, there can be several test runs. Women can have like multiple miscarriages in the preparation phase of being able to then fully embody and then bring these children through full term. And that has been a repeated thing that I've seen over and over again. And I think it's important to talk about this, because I know that so many women have, felt very hopeless of like desperately, having been connected to their child for, years or decades through, the etheric realms or dream space, and knowing that this child is coming through, and then the attempts to actually fulfill that wish and dream doesn't sort of come into fruition, and they can feel a bit disheartened. But I always say, you know, you just one step further. And one thing that I kind of learned along my journey was, obviously it's been long, it's been drawn out, you know, it's taken me through all sorts of different phases and clearing and healing and embodiment. And one thing to bring it back and bring it back into very simple terms was like, what's one thing I can do each day that moves me closer to that, you know, the end, you know, and so, yeah, physical embodiment is a huge part of it. I know at the point when I conceived, I had several months before that, I had gone through a Kundalini activation. So I was in a very, very high frequency. And I had maintained that for like several months. And I look back now and I realized that was preparing me to go through the initial phase of the conception. And of course, after that happened, you know, my frequency dropped significantly and I went through a very deep clearing, dark night of the soul. And I've learned and understood that what I experienced back then was a baseline for what I need to permanently embody to be able to bring these children through. So it, you know, so that's clearing on all levels. You know, there's been so much ancestral, you know, processing that I've had to go through, energetic clearing of past lives where things have gone wrong, you know, but the physicality. And I think in the last 2 years for me, there was a very clear message. It was like, get your body prepared. You have to detox, you have to purify, you have to clear out your vessel and make it the most refined that you possibly can, because that's the only way you're going to hold and anchor the light and frequency that's needed. So
And the ancestral healing too that you mentioned is huge. I have so many women clients specifically right now that are here as part of their journey to be the one that chose to come through. Again, this is always by choice, that chose to come through to be the one to heal the entire line of the women and generations before them, so that stops at them, so that the next generation coming through, their child or children, come through with this pure state of 5D essentially. They don't have to, basically what I'm saying is the starseeds don't have to come in and
no.
imprint on our junk, right? They come in a much clearer vessel. And so there's so much happening on a multidimensional level that it's really hard to wrap your brain around the idea or the notion that it's just science, 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 when it's so much more than science. There's so much more to this that I think people are starting to realize. And I think this conversation is so important for women and men to hear, that want to have children, because it's, the process is shifting. And the more we get, the more we can get off of the, I can't use the word, but the things that we take from that are chemically altered, that are not natural, you know, all of our lives, you know, they have really wreaked havoc on our systems, and we're riddled with toxins and things like that. So they need us to heal our bodies, and this process of coming through and helping to heal the ancestral line. So it's so much more than just getting pregnant right now. There's a lot of healing. And you watching this right now, you might be that person that came in to heal your entire ancestry. So, you know, pat yourself on the back, to have a cry, hug yourself, love yourself, you know, because you chose a big one. You know, this is a big journey for you. So, you know, we got to love ourselves. And there's so, basically what I'm saying is there's so much more to it than just having a baby, and where we're going is, you know, it's crazy. I want to get into more about the duration of the pregnancy. I want to hear what you have to say about this, because another thing that I've been told repeatedly, which I don't share that often, because I think people are already thinking I'm a little bit crazy. I don't want them to like completely write me off, but with some of the stuff that I say. But a couple of things that I've been getting also is that the duration of our gestation period is going to be significantly less. And we're already seeing that with starseeds. Many starseeds are coming in 3 to 4 weeks early, sometimes earlier. Not all, some stay full gestation, but a lot. And what I've been told is that our bodies right now can't hold their frequency as long. So they're basically getting to the point where they're, what's the word? Not evolved. They are they are, what's the word I'm trying to think of? They're ready enough so that they can come out. I know there's a scientific word for that, but I can't think of right now. That is safe for them to come out, but like they can't stay in much longer because the mom wouldn't be able to withhold all of the energy that's coming through with basically two light beings in the same space. So the duration of the pregnancy will be the developmental. That's what I'm trying to say. They're developed enough so that we're going to go down to like 7 months and then even to 5 months. And in a way in the future, it'll be like 3 month pregnancies. Have you heard anything along those lines about the pregnancy duration shortening?
Yeah. I'm so, you're the only other person I've heard talk about this, and kind of makes me excited. So I can share from my own experience and then what I've observed. So in the beginning, when I went through the process of interdimensional conception, I immediately started to immediately my body started to change and my energy completely changed, to the point where within a few weeks, days, my belly was actually growing, and I was like, what is the, I mean, I had no context, right? So I was like, and I remember saying to a friend of mine, I'm like, if I continue to grow at this rate, like, what am I going to look like at the end of 9 months? This is ridiculous. Like, this is unprecedented. And we kind of had this kind of discussion, and we came to the conclusion that an accelerated pregnancy wasn't really off the table. Like, it was a possibility. And we kind of searched through some sacred numbers and looked at things, and what came through was like around 3 months. And so I thought I honestly, in the beginning, I thought that was kind of what might have happened. And so later, obviously that's not what happened, but later, I found some information around Lemuria, and that the gestation time was around, I think it was 81 days, about approximately 3 months. But that was because the vibration that they were existing in was much higher frequency. And I can completely relate to that because my body was charging at such a high frequency. That's why I was going through such accelerated growth in the beginning. When my frequency dropped, I had a period of a very long time where there was no substantial growth, and it would incrementally over time, as my frequency would go up, I would then sort of embody a more fuller sort of pregnancy belly. So I came to the conclusion that it's all about energy and frequency, and there is no linear time frame for what I'm experiencing in the women that I support and connect with. It's a matter of being able to go through that process of embodiment and sustain and hold that frequency. I mean, I completely I laugh at myself now, but I completely drove myself crazy trying to look at correlating data in the beginning to work out a due date. Like, I was consumed by that in the beginning, and I had to let that go for my own sanity, and just sort of feel into the process. But I remember in the beginning, I was trying to seek out midwives and someone who was open-minded enough who could support me in that way. And I found a lady, and I went to her, and I was very open. I was very transparent. I told her everything, and she was open-minded enough to grasp some of it. And she had seen some very unique pregnancies, so that kind of helped. And in the beginning, she did sort of an examination, and she said to me, big one factor I should probably throw in for context is I believe that I'm bringing in two souls, and a lot of the women that connect with me feel like they're bringing in twins. That there is a theme around that, and I think it's a part of the balancing of the masculine and feminine on this planet. I'll park that for a second because I don't want to get off topic. So we'll come back to that. Yeah. So what happened in that consultation was that she kind of felt around. She's like, "Oh, I think there's only one I can feel." And I said, "Look, whatever happens, I'm open. Like, And I had a second consultation with her, but it wasn't so much a physical examination. Like the first one, it was an energy session. It was her to do energy work on me. And I laid on the table. She did the energy work, and I got up, and she just went, "Oh my goodness." And her eyes just widened. She was like, so my belly had completely doubled in size just based off of the energy work.
Whoa.
And she just went, and I was like, yeah, this is what's going on. And so when she afterwards, she did the more of a physical examination, she was like, oh, I can feel two in there. I was like, yeah, I know. So that's where I talk about the interdimensionality of it, because sometimes they're very present there, sometimes they're not, based on the frequency that I'm holding at any particular time.
That's fascinating. I'd like to take it one step further too, and to say something that I haven't said publicly yet, but I have talked to clients about it in private sessions or one-on-one sessions. And I'm so interested to get your take on it. So another thing that I've been getting is that the non-physical component of what we're talking about, meaning, because I have a lot of, not a lot, a good number of clients, women who have either never had children or have had children, are in their 50s or in their 20s. Okay. It's a big random, not random, but a big range. Who are having these pregnancy symptoms, like you just mentioned, everything you just mentioned, hormones, bigger breast, belly has distended like that, symptoms like you're pregnant, nausea, all of this stuff, cravings, but no actual baby inside. And what I was for a period of time, it could be a month, could be a couple of months, or it could be a couple of weeks. I've experienced this as well. Haven't shared that publicly before, but mine was only a few weeks. And one time I told my husband, I'm like, dude, I look like I'm 7 months pregnant. This is insane. And I just joked with him that I was bloated and it was like I had too much dairy for the last few weeks. But like I was like, oh shit, like something's going on here energetically. And I even joked, I was like, I don't want any more babies, like, just like I do not consent to this, but I'll consent to the energetic part. But anyways, that's more of a joke. But in all seriousness, what I have found, or what I've been told, is that this is our way of preparing our bodies physically, emotionally, mentally, everything, for the shorter term pregnancies that we just mentioned. So it's like like you said, it's like a dry run. It's practice for the body to have an escalated pregnancy of a shorter duration, but it's not meant to ever be physical in this moment. And it could be your body just to trigger something within our DNA, and you're volunteering to be a part of it, but may not necessarily have a child later on. And it could be the older women, for maybe, or your body's preparing for something you're going to do down the line years later that you're not ready for now, but it's practicing, it's preparing. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I would totally agree. I would totally agree. I mean, I have come in contact with even like really young women who go through this, and what has been shown to me is that their body is already in the process of starting to prepare them for what they'll go through later on. And that could be like a decade down the line, it's not, but this is such a big process, unlike anything we've experienced before. And yeah, I mean, I hear it so often of women having these sort of pregnancy symptoms that come off and on. And I mean, the difference is mine has been permanent the entire way through. But prior to the point of when I, went through the conception, I was going through that. If I look back, I was in preparation phases for probably since my 20s, at least. And I would go through phases of having symptoms of looking and feeling as though I was pregnant, and very confused about that because I was like, how, what, why, where? But I realized that I've been prepped all my life for this. This is part of my path. And so, yeah, I think that women who are on the path to bring in children will be prepped for a long time before anything happens, whether that be a conception, energetically or physically. to prepare for going through a whole new way. And I think that's what we're transitioning. I talk about that as we transition from one paradigm into the next, everything around preparation, conception, pregnancy, and raising children is all completely changing. And it's through all these women who are having these experiences. So it's, yeah.
I love this. I'm just so into this conversation. I love this conversation so much, and I think that this is really relevant for where we're going into the future. And I think that it's an important conversation to have. What are your thoughts on soul merging? You talk about. I've heard you talk about that before. Do you want to talk about soul merging a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So soul merging in terms of two souls who share the same energetic frequency, just to keep it really simple. There's a lot of terminology and things like that out there, but it's two beings who share the same frequency, and as they come together and merge into one, that creates a unified field that sparks light. It creates life. And through my own experience, that was the point of when I felt the conception process happen. That was the merging that took place. It was very euphoric. Nothing like it. It was unworldly. I've never experienced anything quite like that. So it's basically the process of the two beings coming into unity, into one, that creates a third energy. It creates life form. And obviously not for everyone who's on that path. I also share that for some people, the creation of life can mean a project, a birthing of, it doesn't have to be a child, but in this case, this is what we're talking about. So the merging, and I think that that happens on a higher dimensional level. So it's like the two souls merge as one, creates life, this child who's chosen to come in, and then it has to weave its way down into the physical reality, into this sort of density that we're in right now. So did that explain?
Explain? I think it's I think it's a perfect way to explain kind of what I was talking about earlier of the integration process. But I like soul merging a little bit better. I think it explains it very well. And I think when we move into our future, or where I see us going anyways, as far as I understand, is there's so much, everything is more intuitive and conscious. We're going to get into conscious parenting more, conscious living, conscious eating, or intuitive eating, intuitive parenting. All of those basically means the same thing. Do you think that we'll get to a point where most women and or parents, of course we want to bring in the fathers as well, have a relationship or a knowing of the soul coming through beforehand, and it's more of this idea of them consciously bringing the soul in, like we did in Lemuria? Do you believe that's where we're going as well?
I don't think that I've come across anyone who hasn't been aware of the soul prior to the merging or any type of conception process taking place. That tends to be the precursor in like these children showing up, whether it be through meditation or dream space, or having some sort of profound connection initially. And so that's kind of the initial stage of the child announcing themselves, basically saying, hey, I'm coming through, get prepared. I think that's a big component of it. And I think, obviously, I feel that is a part of our remembrance too, because I think a lot of the times it's only through our awakening that we remember that that's part of our path and mission that we're going to be bringing through those children. I mean, I've been aware of it for like 20 years. These children that I am bringing through originally connected with me during a progression session that I had in, I think it was like 2005, perhaps. And they announced themselves at that point. And, I obviously forgot about it for many, many years, but like they have been around me. This has been part of something that we've chosen to do prior to incarnation. I truly believe that. I truly, truly believe that.
Do you think that there's a parallel reality someplace else where you're the mother and they're your children on a physical level outside of here in this timeline?
Say that again.
Do you think that those two beings and you are connected in another timeline, someplace else, even off world, where in a physical sense you are already a family?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Or I would call it like a future timeline, and I do connect with that often. You know, sometimes if I'm going through something and I need a bit of hope or inspiration, I will be taken into a future timeline where they're already they're already existing. They're, you know, like they're doing their thing. I had one very vivid dream. So I get a lot of my information via dream state. That's a big component of it. And I had a dream, I think it was around 2017, where I was walking with my child and she was like 14 years old. And we were, it was like very much in what I call New Earth reality. Like we were in a totally different world. And we were walking and talking, and I said to her, "Do you know the process of how you were conceived?" And she looked at me, she's like, "Duh," like basically, you know, as children do. Yeah, she goes, "It was the energetic merging between you and dad, like, like it was like a no-brainer." And
Uh,
yeah, and I said to her, like, "Do you realize how hard it was for me at that time? Like, no, not many people believed me. It was very challenging." And she kind of looked at me like, why? Like, I don't understand that. Like, that's so normal. This is how it's done now. I think that's what I'm trying to convey is at that time of her being at that age, that was has become the new normal. And that's what I've always felt. Eventually we'll transition into a more streamlined process. It won't be sort of all over in many different variables. And I said to her, "Do you remember your time in my womb?" And she screwed her face up and she said, "I don't like it very much." And with that, I woke up and I had to process that because I was like, am I doing something wrong? Like, but I just realized it was purely just the density. And I think that's what I've experienced over this year. These children that come in and out based on obviously the frequency that I'm holding, but also what's happening on the planet right now. So yeah, I've
I,
always been told that they would come in. They were never intended to be born through the times of chaos and change. They were always to come in a little bit after until things had
yeah,
stabilized.
yeah. Star seeds are definitely, they definitely choose beforehand what part of the ascension they're coming into for sure. Some of them are bypassing altogether, and because they need to come in because of age, they need to be a certain age, they have walk-ins.
Yeah.
So they'll have somebody come in for them in place of them, and then they'll step in when the time is right. But I just want to bring up an important point that you just mentioned. I have never met a soul that enjoyed being in the womb. And if anything, a lot of starseeds, what they'll do is they'll hang out near their fetus, that's their body that's being born or not born, developed, and they'll dip in and out of it, but they won't stay in because it's so claustrophobic, it's so dense, it's so dark, and there's so much noise, not just mom's thoughts, but
Yeah.
the environment around the 3D. It can be overwhelming and even intoxicating. And so what's interesting is a lot of people that suffer from claustrophobia as a child and an adult have the it's triggered or not triggered. It is a result of a direct result of being claustrophobic in the womb. And as soon as they're an adult and they're in a confined space, it brings them back to that trauma and they freak out. And that's why most people that do have claustrophobia, it's because of that trauma from being in the womb. It's crazy how that can be so challenging for new spirits to come in. They don't like the birth process here. And that I could talk about for an hour because I was a hypnobirthing practitioner for many years. I think it's my Lemurian midwife version of me tried to help women have a more natural childbirth and relax and do self hypnosis and work with the body through breathing, etc. That I was trying to help women help their babies come in a more peaceful way. And that's another thing about Lemuria is that at least my version of it. I know I've talked to others who said the opposite or their experience was different. But the birthing process in Lemuria was much more beautiful, much more serene, much more calm. And women really didn't experience pain. At least
Yeah.
that's from what I remember and what I've seen with my clients. I know there's a few others out there saying something else. And there could be other versions of the story depending on what happened. We can never say 100%. But I think we're moving towards a more peaceful birth. The point of conscious conception and bringing these babies in, I think, is so that we have an understanding, an agreement before they come in. Throughout the pregnancy, mom and dad know what's happening and why they're here, and there's a much calmer pregnancy. And then the birth process is also going to change. And we could go into birth in a minute too, if you want, of how I see the birth be shifting and birthing centers being created. And the whole process will change so that we don't have traumas when we come out immediately from all of that we just endured. What do you think about all of that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think one thing that just like popped into my mind is I think a large reason why a lot of these children go undetected medically is because they don't want to be born in the hospital systems. Just to keep it really, really simple, like, if they were detected, then, you probably would be birthed in. And I think that's part of the reason why they're coming through in this way, is because we're breaking out of that so that it will change. And it's almost like, I mean, I know for myself that I've prepared myself that I could be very much alone, and go through this process as a sacred process without having any support. Or if I do, the right people will show up. Like I had to kind of, give that away. But I did, a couple of years ago, I got really mad actually. And I was like, you're going to have to give me something because I feel very alone in this process. And they took me through what they called a dress rehearsal. And I was taken into like an altered state where I was shown the whole process of how I would be giving birth. And it was very painless. I was very supported by a lot of galactic beings, a lot of light beings. And it was almost like I had a full team around me, like a medical team around me, but they just weren't in physical reality. And they were guiding me and instructing me the whole way through of what to expect, what to do now, So yes, I think that is completely going to change.
Yeah, I had a session with somebody recently. It was a wonderful woman who is an angelic. She's from the angelic realm and incarnated here. She's been a guardian angel for many, many, millennia. And she's been around a lot of children in their birthing process. And so she kept having these dreams of being around children, working with newborns and holding them. And she was like, what is my job supposed to be here? She reached out to me to help her figure out what her journey is and why she was having these dreams. And what we discovered in her session was something fascinating that I don't remember the exact words, but what they used, but they're these birthing centers. I'm just going to call them that, but there was a very beautiful way they said it that will open up all over the world, where women can go to give birth for support, but it's very holistic. If you don't want to do a home birth and maybe they want to have people around, but it's kind of like birth centers that we have now in many areas of the world, but very different. And women like her that are, a lot of them were angelics that were in the physical form, would nurture and hold the baby so that the baby was never put down in a crib. I always had someone holding this, and that was her job. She would hold and nurture the babies when they were newborn and help them. And taking it one step further, merging her energy with theirs would help them not be afraid. So these starseeds that are coming in for the first time as a human, let's say, that helped them acclimate or merge in with our well, that at that point will be 5D, but it's so that they're not afraid. It's like orienting them. And I was like, oh my God, I've never heard of this before. This is absolutely beautiful. Like, I wonder if anyone else has received this before. And I wonder how you feel about that. And because to me, it sounds very Lemurian, because in Lemuria, they never put babies down. They were always passed around, and the whole community there was a mom and a dad, but everybody took care of the baby, and it would always be held until it could walk, essentially. And somebody always had them in their arms. And I look back at how we're programmed here: let the baby cry, let them cry it out, sleep in the crib all by themselves in a room down the hall from yours in the nursery. And it's so backwards than how it was done back then. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, I mean, I agree. I haven't come across anything so specific in detail as what you have, and that's just beautiful how you shared all that. But I think most certainly everything that we have experienced up until now is backwards, and it's this kind of reversal process of bringing bringing in more ancient or traditional ways of allowing, I think the environment, the energy has to be very pristine for these children to come through, and to be able to create these centers. Because if this transitions into the new normal, as I believe it will, as I foresee things moving in the future, I think that there will be these centers that will be having very specific people with specific roles that will allow the nurturing of these children in their welcoming into this world, and to give them, to set them up in the best way possible to, you know, to be received and nurtured, and feel that love and energy and support in their very, you know, early stages of being here on this planet.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Well, Alisha, I really have enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything else that you want to relate today, or to tell the audience? I mean, you're so beautiful and brave to come out and talk about these topics for many years now, and even when it's taboo and people look at both of us, I think like two women are a little bit nutty, and I've heard it all as well. And so, you know, it takes a lot for us to come out and help pioneer a movement like such as this, and bring awareness to children and the birthing process and all of this. Is there anything else that you want to say to everybody watching?
I guess the one thing that I haven't shared that I think is important to cover is it's not just a, like, yes, the Lemurian aspect is very prevalent, but it's also a very much a galactic process. You know, I've had so much support of being taken up on craft. I mean, that's how it all started for me. I was taken up on craft. I had a lot of incisions on my belly, you know, things like that. And I think that's a huge component of what I have been shown is, you know, my life on Arcturus, and that's where I originally started doing this process, and how it correlates to bringing that in. It's like about the soul lineage, and then it was like replicated and brought components of that into Earth on Lemuria, and then obviously where we're heading into the new Earth reality. So yeah, just to, I think just acknowledging the galactic component, and you know, the Arcturian origins of how I feel is a very big process. And even, you know, of late, like I've gone through experiences where I've known that I've been worked on, my physical body's been worked on and prepped and upgraded, and like a deeper integration with my children. And I've been on Arcturian ships while this process is happening.
Well,
And
hold on. Can we talk about that just for like maybe 5 minutes? Like, because now everyone's gonna be like rolling because they want to know more. Can you talk a little bit about it? I want to know.
yeah, I mean, that's a huge component of it. I thought we didn't cover that up, so I thought
Yeah,
I'd just
I would love to talk about that.
yeah. Well, in the beginning, I started having conscious contact just before and around the conception time. And I was told that I was channeling the Arcturian ray during my energy work sessions. And I had no idea what that meant, or nothing. I had no context. And then incrementally, they started showing up and appearing at night, and they were like pouring frequency and energy into my womb, into my belly. So it's been a big component of this process. But yeah, of late, this process of what I can call attuning frequency and supporting the physicality of the children coming in. Like often I do get taken on craft and worked on, and I will wake up with visible marks or scars or incisions, and they fade away. They're not permanent. But that's been a massive component of what I have experienced. And I was told initially that I had to bridge and show people, because there's obviously different schools of thought. There's like the whole light conception, immaculate conception, and then there's like the hybrid children and the very galactic component. I've gone through both processes, or had components of both, and I was shown that I, through my work, to share to people that it's not just one, that one or that one, it's kind of one and the same, that it all works together. And so yeah, this experience that I had only a couple of months ago, and I'm still kind of processing it all, I guess, because I all of a sudden I know that I get asked to lie down, and as I lie down, I feel myself bifurcate onto a ship, and I'm very aware that there's a lot that's working on me. And this is a great story, actually. I was told that one of my children was struggling in the density and had to be reattuned. So very similar to what you were talking about the angelic client that you had, and that she was holding the child. Um, and so what I was shown was that one of the energy of one of my children had to be removed from my field, reattuned, and then put back in. I know that sounds very out there, but that was an experience that I went through. And it was only a few days later that I was working with one of my starseed clients who's an incredible soul. She's only 17. And at the end of the session, it was completely unrelated. She has a very Arcturian connection too. And she said, "Oh, I had this experience that I wanted to share with you." I was like, "Oh, okay." And she said, "A couple of days ago, I was taken up onto an Arcturian ship, and there was a pregnant woman who one of her children was struggling to hold frequency. And so I had to hold and attune that child to raise its vibration until it was put back in." And I just went, "Oh my god."
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
Probably no
yeah.
accident that you guys were together in the physical, because she
Mm,
was helping you. Wow, that is crazy.
yeah, yeah. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah. So that's yeah. And I think when I was in the beginning trying to work out more about what I was going through, I actually went and had a regression just purely out of the curiosity of what had occurred during the missing time of all the times that I'd been taken up on Bullcraft and had my memory wiped. And I wanted to know what was happening to me.
Mhm.
And under regression, I went into a life on Arcturus where I was going through the exact same process that I am. So kind of going back to your question, going, um, that I was kind of attuning or holding the frequency of these children to be prepared to be birthed. And it correlated with the birthing always, how I'm shown it is always correlated with the shift of consciousness that occurs on the planet. And that was happening through my while I was under hypnosis, that was happening on Arcturus. So I feel like my soul has done this many, many times on different, not just here and during the times of Lemuria, but on other planets too.
I mean, I think that's probably true for a lot of people that are bringing in either their galactic blueprint or their experience someplace else is really what's helping them do it now, because I'm sure even including myself have done this before. And
Mm.
so that's why we volunteered to come down and to do it here. And we're part of this great experiment, to help bring us and evolve, help humanity evolve. It's such a beautiful thing. And you're so right. It's not just about Lemuria. It's the galactic, it's the Pleiadians, the Andromedans, the Arcturians, I mean, and more. And the indigenous. We can't forget the indigenous of the earth and inner earth. And so it's not just about Lemuria. For me, I always bring it back to Lemuria because that's where my memories are, and that's what I have a lot of clients and experience with visions there. And but it's a collection right now of just universal, let's just call it that. Everybody is helping right now with this ascension, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. And whomever is meant to hear this conversation for whatever reason will be listening to this right now, because I believe that we are kind of when we need something, the universe delivers it in some way. So everybody watching this is going to be watching for a reason. I think that's a beautiful thing. So Alisha, we're gonna have to do a part 2 because there's so much more we could talk about in your Arcturian background. So I'm gonna have you come back and we're gonna get into that some more and more of your galactic origins. That could be a really fun conversation. But I think for today, this was a beautiful conversation, and I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to me and the audience listening about your experience and sharing everything. I think it was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sherri. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for watching. Yeah.
And how can they get a hold of you? I'm going to put your information in the description, but if they want to find out more about you, what you do, and how to contact you, is there a good way for them to do that?
CosmicGateway.com is my main website, but also I have a platform, New Earth Children, or the website www.newearthchildren.org.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Well, I'll put that information in the description below, and so everybody can find you really easily. So thank you everybody for watching today. Thank you, Alisha, for joining me. This was like my favorite conversation for in a long time. So I really personally, I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you,
So thank
Sherri.
you. Thank you everybody for watching. See you guys later.